Today I'm working on the Dynahoe drive shaft. I need to get this addressed before I can go any farther. I need to shorten this thing up, and I need to get from the 4C wing style U-joint to the 1550 that the back of the AT545 uses. So the way you shorten this up is come in here. This is a piece of tubing that's welded to this end and this end. Like drive shafts are made with pieces. So we need to keep this section, and we're going to cut this right here. Now you can do this with just a cutting wheel going around there ever so gently, or you can, put it in a lathe. Well, I've already done the 1550 joint. This is the old bus drive shaft here. I chucked it into it, I cut it short, chucked it into a lathe, and then cut with the lathe until I was down to the metal. Now this one I need to get off of here. So the first thing I got to do is get this collar loose. This collar's threaded on here, and there's a seal supposed to keep the grease in. We got to take that apart and slide this out. All right, so you can see how far that goes up in there. So it's important that, one, it's got to be phased correctly. So when we're done, we need to have the yoke, the end cap of the U-joint on this one in line with the end cap of this one. If it's like this, it will bind up and it will destroy U-joints. All right, drive shafts on an angle work on a radial axis. So when they're in an angle like this, they actually speed up when they come around to this one, to the bind of the turn. It speeds up on 4 different spots, 2 different spots, however you want to look at it. So it's important you have this yoke so that, 1, it can move back and forth, and 2, if you had suspension or travel, it would need to be able to move. Now in our case, the transmission is going to be, an engine is going to be mounted in rubber, but the rear axle is solid mounted. So, but we're still keeping this, of course. So we're going to take this apart, and we're going to try and get this apart here and see what we got to work with here. This is 2.5 inches in diameter. This is 3.5. So someone we know had this lathe and said we could use it, and I think it's really too small for what I need and what I need to do. But so we graciously accepted. We could take a die grinder, and we still may have to. This little machine may not do it. But what I'm trying to do here with the dial indicator is to get this thing as close as we can. Now, these jaws turn all at the same time. It doesn't matter where you tighten this, they all tighten the same way. But I've manipulated it enough. I'm within like 6/1000ths total. So I can live with 6/1000ths. So what that means is when we go to grind this off and we get into the actual end yoke here, the end of the slip yoke, then we're going to be 6/1000ths possibly deeper cut on it. And 6/1000 isn't going to be a big difference for us. So I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm not going to record it because I'm not a machinist. This will be my first time running a lathe, so yeah, you can figure it out. It'll look like a monkey playing with a football, so it won't be enjoyable for anybody, I'm sure. Well, it took some heat to get it off. Alright, so here's what I come up with. I need a piece of 1-inch material, much like this. Cut 3.5 inches round. On one side, I need the diameter bored 3.319 and going 6/10 of an inch deep. And on this side, 2.34 diameter, 4/10 of an inch. So that will allow the AT545 1550 yoke to come in this way, and the slip yoke to come in this way. And a friend of mine has a full-size lathe that I think I could use. So yeah, it would be nice if I had the ability to hole saw 2.345 out of the center. You could take the 2.345, go like 2 1/4, and go all the way through, and then finish off machining. But I don't know. So essentially, this is what we'll have. One yoke over top the other, connected by a reducer. And I'm thinking that's going to be plenty strong. I know we're not going to be back as far as this, but you got to figure that's a heck of a lot beefier setup that we'll have on here than, you know, this thin wall tubing. So I'm plenty okay with that. This ends up being like 3/32, if I measured that right. So, all right, so that's the next step. So I got my part machined, and we're putting this together, and I need to make sure that the crosses of the U-joint are in the same plane. So when this works, they both are turning at the same time. So I stick a level on the back and a level on the front and get it as close as we can so these two are in the same plane. I just marked them with a Sharpie, and then what I'll do is when I put it in the lathe to dial indicate it, I'll make sure all these line up as we tack weld it together. So I got the slip yoke in the lathe here, and I'm dial indicating it to make sure that it is in here centered and not doing this, you know, going out of center, so that when we put our adapter on, we spot weld it, we can get it dial indicated as well. So we have to start with the best we have, which is a slip yoke. This is only a three jaw chuck, and it's really difficult to get it where we need it here. However, this should tell the story that we are centered, and I've got it set at 0, and I think I've got it down to about 4.5 thousandths, the best I can get it. You can see right about, yeah, right about there's 4.5. So I can live with 4.5 because we probably have more play than that in the slip yoke itself. So now that that's on, we'll take our adapter, we'll bring it around to our spot where the Sharpie mark is, right there. And then we'll put the adapter on, and we will dial indicate the adapter onto here, get it squared, and then we'll put the other yoke on, dial indicate it to the adapter. What we got there, like 2 thousandths. I'm good with that. I'm gonna tack it a few more places. I've got it tacked here and here, so I'll now tack on the opposite corners. All right, I've got it welded in, and we did pretty good. We ended up with about 4 thousandths, and I can live with that. That's more than adequate. So now what we have to do is dial indicate the yoke here, and then tack it around. All right, so we have a good heavy tack weld every 90 degrees. So now what we'll do is I will just connect the dots on either one. And last time what I did was I welded from one to the other, and then I skipped 90 degrees and went the opposite and welded it. So I was pulling on the opposite sides with each weld to try and keep it straight. All right, so I got it wire wheeled, and I flap disc it. I turned the lathe on, took a flap disc, and just, you know, cleaned it up, made it smooth, so it looks like, you know, more of a one piece. Turned out pretty good. I was within I think 4.5 thousandths, so I'm happy with that. I think it'll work just fine. So I'm gonna let this dry, give it a couple coats of paint, and we can put it together. Okay, final coat of paint, and final coat on this. So as soon as it dries, I got the temperature turned up in the shop, so it'll hopefully dry up pretty good, and we'll put it together. Alright, so it's completely assembled now. So now, I was hoping for 10.5. What do we got here? Center of U-joint to center of U-joint cap. We're going to be about 11.5. So now I have that slip yoke set where it was when I took this apart, because there was a definite line there and I measured so I would know where it was. So we're back where that was, so we have enough travel here like I had before. 1 inch longer than I really was after, I don't think is going to be horrible. We might be able to work with that. Let's look at the Dynahoe. So I put the radiator in place just for some preliminary measurements, you know, get a rough idea. Now, when I was doing the drive shaft, I wanted to pull the yoke off the pinion, so I've got the motor and transmission kind of cocked off to the one side so I could get to the pinion, because there wasn't a lot of room in there to work. So keep that in mind. That's why everything looks kind of cattywampus here. When it's where it belongs, we have about 1.5 inches of clearance in here between the alternator pulley and the fan shroud, and this is in its factory location where it belonged. I would really like to keep that where it goes and not have to stretch the frame. It would be in my best interest. As long as everything else works out to where it's accessible and I can work around, then that's what we're going to do. Because if I have to stretch the front of this, it's more work, and I'm not afraid of work, but it just compounds. It just gets more and more and more. The biggest determination as to what we do here is going to be that drive shaft and serviceability on this engine. But I think we're going to be okay. We're close. I think we have 2.5 inches from that hub of the fan clutch to the radiator. Now, we're probably not going to use that fan hub. We're probably going to go ahead and pull that off, put just a regular Cummins fan hub on it with no fan, and run an electric fan and just mount it to this fan shroud. That's good enough sheet metal. It's strong enough. It's got a little bend in it where someone's boogered it, but we can deal with that. And I can just recess my cooling fan backwards in here, reverse the polarity possibly, and get it right. There's a whole lot of things to overcome, but the drive shaft was the big obstacle that would tell us where we need to go this way. So the next video on this one, we put the drive shaft in, getting the motor and transmission set back where it needs to be, and start moving forward from there. There's a couple surprises on this coming around. So, oh, and just so you all know, I am having camera troubles. I've had several guys complain about the audio. A couple guys mentioned about the video freezing up and stopping, but the audio keeps going. There's video missing. I've got 4 cameras, and all 4 cameras right now are giving us grief. So be patient. It's all I can do right now, and I'm working on 7 different projects. I'm a little behind on videoing and editing. I'm kind of frustrated actually with the camera situation, but I'm doing my best. So that's all I can tell you. I'll do my best. It is what it is. I'm looking at other cameras again, and I haven't made a determination. It's hard to find a camera with a large enough screen that I can see, because my vision isn't as great as it once was, that will hold up in this environment. It's dirty, it's greasy, you know, there's grinding dust, there's rust dust, there's paint fumes, overspray. This is a harsh environment for cameras for sure. So be patient. We'll do our best. As soon as I can find something, hopefully it'll get better. Anyways, that's it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, leave your comments down below, and we will catch you on the next episode of this old Dynahoe.